I'm Rebecca Beneteau of Pleasure Evolution, and with me is my very good friend David Salih. And what do I want to say about creating no matter what? Um, just the fact that everything that I do is kind of designed to help people get more in touch with their bodies, their uniqueness, their gifts, their sexuality, and to be able to share those with whoever and however they want, and to be more of ourselves in the world. I call it empowerment in the bedroom and beyond. And what's more empowering than to create your art and create your life? So that's what inspired me to get into this conversation. What about you, David?
Well, I was really inspired about the conversations that you and I have been having regarding our personal creative projects we've been taking on, like your book that you're just in the process of finishing. That's very exciting, and I've been sharing about my process of my musical that I've been writing, and um, and there's a unique energy and inquiry that we're in when we're in the midst of the creativity. And just I love the way that you and I have supported each other in our processes, and sharing our what we bump up against in our process, and how we overcome those. And just seems like a great opportunity to share that inquiry with others while we're in the midst of it, so that others can get some juice from this conversation like we've been getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, some folks have joined us. And so let's just say hi, Dina. Hi, Jan. Um, it's great that folks are coming on. Yes, it's true. I signed a contract to write a book right before we went into social distancing. And you've been working on your musical for a while. And so we just had this idea of how do you create no matter what is going on around you? Because I really could have used the world turning topsy-turvy to become depressing, um, difficult, make it harder to get in touch with my creativity. And instead what I did was go, oh my God, this is amazing. There aren't as many demands on my time as there were before. This is actually is making me feel more creative, because in some ways, at least creating an artistic project is a somewhat solitary thing, unless you're working collaboratively. But writing a book, or like you're writing a musical, writing music, that's something that you really need chunks of uninterrupted time to focus on.
Well, and also it's interesting is now, we tend to focus on things that supposedly get in our way of creating powerfully. And like, for instance, with time not being a factor anymore, it gives us an opportunity to really be with what's really getting in our way. Like, because we can look at, well, I have the time now, why am I not working? Or now what am I dealing with in myself? It's an opportunity to be more present to the internal blocks, which are really um, uh, the powerful way to address any of this, because on the outside it's just whenever however we perceive a block on the outside, it's really reflecting our relationship with the blocks and our relationship with what we're working on or not working on that we wish we were working on, or all of that.
Well, and I'm pretty sure that we said we're going to talk more in depth about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Right. But I am 100% in agreement with you. I mean, I fully believe. And first of all, I want to say that everything that we talk about is descriptive, not prescriptive. I want to encourage you to check in with yourself. And if it feels resonant and true for you, great. And if it doesn't, that's totally cool. But what I've found is that my reality is created by my thoughts. That how I think is what shows up. And an external block, as you said, is usually just something that I can use as an excuse for not working. And I could get caught up in trying to resolve that external block, or I could start to look at my own internal resistance.
Right. And it may not even be an excuse per se, but it may be more of like something that really occurs as real. Like it was really, um, something that needs to be addressed or dealt with before we have the freedom and the clarity, the open space to create freely, because that's really what's required.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to piggyback on what you're saying about, yeah, neither of us are really here to tell anybody what to do or how you're supposed to act or how things should be, quote unquote. We're not really interested in that conversation at all. It's really more about an inquiry and holding a space for you to maybe ask some questions that you haven't asked before, look at some things you haven't looked at before, and support you in that, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although I had to laugh when you said we're not here to tell you what to do. Both of us really like to tell people what to do, but only people that like to be told what to do.
Sure.
That's just maybe a little too much personal information about us, but there you go.
Sure.
So let's just talk about discernment, because I've been looking at this a lot. Especially people who've been following me for a while know that I've gone deep dive into the tools of Access Consciousness, and they ask me a lot to look at what is it that I want to create, like really create in my whole life. I often look at things and it's like, oh, I want to create a thriving business, or I want to write this book. But what's the bigger picture of what I want to create? Because in some ways, I think if we can identify that, the energy of what we want our life to be like, then the pieces of how we get there and what fulfill that will fall into place. Yeah. So here's like the biggest question is like, if time and money and talent were no obstacle, what would you create as your life? How would you wake up every morning? What would your day feel like? How would you be showing up?
Yeah, and it's a powerful question, and I don't think we take enough time in general to ask those questions. It's easy to become wrapped up in what we need to do, and we got to make a living, and we got to dress, and we got to take care of this and take care of the house and whatever. And it takes something to just stop a moment and be with really what our heart's desires are. What is your soul calling? Yeah, and that can look all kinds of different. So that's one of the intentions of this particular call we wanted to do, is to give you the opportunity to ask yourself that question. What do I really desire in my life? What do I desire to create? Whether that be artistically, maybe that could be some project that's always been on the back burner. One day I really want to do this thing. Maybe dust that off and look at it for a minute. Is that something I'm really ready to do right now that I would like to, if I could, if I was free of considerations and concerns about, well, but this and but that, and what about this? And okay, what if we just for a moment considered, would you take that on at this time if you knew that all of those considerations would be taken care of one way or another? And just play with that question for a moment.
Yeah. I just noticed when you asked the question at all, my whole body just kind of went, you know. And there was something else that popped into my mind. It was about, what if we were only responsible for the what and not the how? And that's a thing that I think often bogs us down, is that we come up with a what, but then we don't know how we're going to create that thing. So we stop ourselves. And so this is also an invitation for you to let go of that. It's not important to know that right now. It's just important to know what your heart's longing is, what your desire is.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about this inquiry is that sometimes we have those things in our mind that we hold as that we would like to do it if only X, Y, and Z. And it's sort of like this, we experience this longing for it. And it takes a certain amount of energy to sustain that longing and that wishing. But sometimes when we give ourselves permission for it, we may find, you know what, that was something that I wanted to create at one time, and I'm not really feeling inspired anymore. and we have
Right.
that power to let it go. Or we can say, you know what, I'm definitely going to do that now. Right now is not the time. I'll come back to that in a month or a year or whatever.
Right. I mean, I've even gotten into the habit of asking, because I get about a million ideas a minute, is this for me? Because I'm such an empath that I think sometimes I pick up on great ideas out of the ether that aren't mine to fulfill necessarily. And how I know it's for me is if it lights me up. If I feel more expanded when I think about it, then it's for me. And there's a question coming through on the chat that she says, after trauma, I lost my identity, so I'm still in the process to understand what or feel what I really want. Me, authentic me, not my parents, society, or my mask. Right, and that's a great question, and it's a great inquiry, shall we say? And so, where are you separating from yourself in order to fill the expectations and projections of others? And everything that is, would you be willing to let that go? And you don't need to know how you're going to let it go, and just like, would you be willing to let that go? All the places where we pretend we don't know what we want. In my experience, particularly as a sex coach, most people actually do know what they want. They don't feel like they deserve it, or they can have it, or that it's okay for them to have it. So there's a whole way in which we use judgment of self in order to keep us confused about what we might like to have.
Absolutely. And so part of the question, part of this inquiry on this call can be, as you're noticing what you're desiring, would you be willing to allow yourself to even desire it? Like that in itself can be liberating. Like, you know what? I just want to be with that desire. That is something that I desire, and I would like to fulfill that in my life. I have no idea how at this point. It's just, and it's looking at whether you're willing to allow that to show up in your life, or without going to any kind of doing of how that's going to happen, or is it possible, or yada yada. Just being the inquiry. Wow, that's something I desire. And given that's something that I desire, what might that look like if I was open to that manifesting in my life, to that showing up in my life, to the circumstances and possibilities showing up for that to manifest in my life?
Yeah. Can you talk? We've talked about this before. That idea of possibilities. Sometimes I know when my kids were small, because it would take forever to get them dressed to get out of the house, but I wanted them to feel like they had choice. I would hold up two different things. You can wear this or you can wear this. Because if they were confronted with the whole closet, we would be there forever. And invariably they would pick a summer dress on a 30-degree day, right?
Okay.
And I say that, but in a way, I kind of taught them that they only could choose from a limited range of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I bring that up because there's a way in which I noticed that when I first started contemplating that I could create beyond my wildest dreams, I got really scared. I liked knowing I could create this or this, but if I could create anything and everything, it was almost overwhelming to decide what to focus on. So how does one live into expanding their possibilities?
Good question. How does one expand into living their possibilities? Well, I think it starts with being in question, of being in the wonder and question of what is it that I truly desire, and what is it. If I could hold a space safe enough for me to wish for and want for anything, what might that look like? And one of the concerns that may come up is, well, I don't know what to choose. There's too much, or like there is a comfort in somebody saying, would you want to wear this outfit or this outfit? There's like a certain comfort. And yet, like you're saying, that really boxes us in, and we have a tendency to look for the options that we're given by our family or our community or the media, you know, or our government or whatever. Like, you can have A or B, which do you want? And so part of opening up to possibility in our life, like real possibility, not just a decision or between two things or three things or whatever, like just stepping into what's possible inside of anything being possible is can be kind of scary sometimes. And there's a certain it's a certain relationship that we're cultivating with ourselves. I want to say it's a certain relationship of trust with ourselves. Well, can I trust myself enough to have that desire, that really is my desire? You know, and the thing is, we're not stuck with any of them. You know, we tend to think, oh, well, if I choose this, then I have to see it through fruition so I can be a reasonable person or whatever. And we're not, that's an important thing just to keep in mind here, is all to put in as well, that you're not stuck with anything you choose. When you're in the right possibility, you can choose anything. You might choose you want to be a rocket scientist today, and then tomorrow say, you know what, I don't want to be a rocket scientist, I want to be a fireman, and that's okay. Like, we're really taught, you get your choice. Okay, you already chose. Now you're done. That's what you have to do for a reasonable amount of time so you can be a reasonable human being. Well, screw that. Like, we're not here to be reasonable human beings.
Yes, right. So everywhere you made it vital, valuable, and necessary to be a reasonable human being. Would you be willing to let that shit go?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. And I mean, I love what you're saying. And it's just occurring to me that what creates is our choices. And you said something in there about having made bad choices, or do I trust my choices? And I think so much of, we don't, right? We've been taught to judge our choices. We look back on what we chose yesterday or last week or last year, and then we beat ourselves up. We decide it was a wrong choice, so now we beat ourselves up. Or we decide it was a right choice, and therefore we have to keep honoring it because it was the right choice then, even though it's not the right choice now. That's how I stayed married 10 years twice.
Well, I think those right choices, quote unquote, are the most detrimental. They're the ones that stick us the most, because well, it worked then and it felt really good then. So even though it doesn't, it felt good a year ago when I chose whatever, but it doesn't feel good now, but it must have been the right one. So I need to stay with it. Like that, those can be the trickiest to detach from. You know what? Just because it was the right choice for you then doesn't mean it's the right choice for you in this moment. We're constantly shifting and evolving beings. And so by giving yourself permission to evolve and to change our choices and to make even choices that don't lead to where we wanted it to be, that we might consider bad, like we could give ourselves permission to make bad choices. Like, I think it'd be a great idea to make as many bad choices as we can.
Yeah, because they're not actually bad choices.
Right.
The trick is you make a choice and you get to decide whether it was bad or good. And usually that's relative to the outcome, but we don't actually know. Like, I bought a house in Philadelphia. We ended up losing that house because it was too expensive. But in the process of losing that house, I decided to move to Asheville. Moving to Asheville was an amazing thing and took me to totally new places. Like, every place that we've gone before is a stepping stone to where we end up now. And if we don't like where we are now, know that it was the outcome of the choices we made already, but that today is a brand new chance to choose. And that's why deciding what you want to create, particularly in terms of, I think, a felt sense of being, that's where it becomes so important. Because if you're committed to that, then you will get shown opportunities to live into that.
Well, yes, and when also, I mean, piggybacking on that, when we're choosing from our heart's desire, there's a reason why our heart is being pulled to something. There's a reason why your heart's being pulled to something, or your soul is being called to something, whether it be a lesson or an experience or a part of your evolution to reach you to the next thing that is really a more filling experience or desire. Um, it's outside um, of our what our rationalization can comprehend sometimes, and what our attachment to it looking like. You know, just because it didn't turn out the way we thought it was supposed to look like does not mean that we didn't actually, that our heart and our souls didn't actually get what was being called for.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
what even our heart's desires really were. Sometimes we might feel called to live in a particular place, for instance, or have a certain career or create a certain project. And then we get to it, and then the mind can judge, oh, well, this didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, so I made the wrong decision. And then we can tend to undermine our desires.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of that goes on in our lives, and is reinforced by society. Oh, well, you chose the wrong thing, or you can't
Mm-hmm.
listen to your heart. Don't trust your heart. And but the mind's judgment doesn't make it true that it was the wrong thing. It just didn't show up the way you thought it was going to.
Right.
Your heart and your soul got something from that experience, whether you're aware of it in that moment or not. You may not even realize till years later down the road, like, wow, I got some really valuable lessons
Yeah.
out of that experience. I got to know myself better. You know, with my creative project, you know, my musical, I've had a part of that process has been noticing. I've been having flashbacks of many musical projects I've done in the past, and seeing how, even though those didn't go the way I wanted them to, like there was a time where I wanted to be a pop star, and that didn't happen, and I was really crushed for a while over that. And I'm so glad I'm not a pop star now, I have to say. But I can
Mm-hmm.
see that all the work that I did, all that production and writing, all is contributing to something I'm creating now, which is, for me, is more fulfilling. This project I'm working on now is more fulfilling than any project I've ever worked on in the past, and I'm more excited about it, I want to say, than anything I've worked on in the past. So sometimes you don't have that perspective till later on down the road. So letting go of our mind's attachments of the judgment of those judgments is a huge piece of creating an unfettered creativity.
Releasing judgment is a huge piece of unfettered creativity. Yeah, judgment itself is often the heart of all of the blocks. And we've got a couple of conversation things in the chat. Dina was saying that when she's in front of a big choice, she gets numb and overwhelmed. And so here's a question that you might play with, that I do, because for me, it often looks like confusion. I don't know what I want right now. So first of all, where this is coming from is when you live in the questions automatically create. They create awareness, they create energy, they become an invitation for things to start moving in your direction. Whenever you come to a conclusion, you've already limited what can show up for you. So when I'm confused, if I just go, oh, I'm feeling confused, well, the first thing I might ask is, who does this belong to? Might not be mine at all. But another question I ask is, if I wasn't confused right now, what would I know? If I wasn't manifesting numbness, what might I be aware of? And then just see what little voice, what little whisper of inspiration I hear.
And I find also sometimes that there's a feeling of, and I've felt this many times in the past, because I tend to feel through my choices, rather than, I mean, sometimes they come spontaneously, but more often than not, it's something I have to feel through that takes time. And I got a lot of heat through that in my life. Of, come on, why can't you just make a decision? Come on. And I would feel like, oh, why can't I make a decision? And it would just like lock me into this feeling of paralysis. And I learned over time to give myself permission to take the time to feel through till I felt, oh, this is really what I want to choose. This is what resonates with what I'm committed to and who I am at this point. So that may be a piece of it for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I know that in human design, they talk about that we respond from either sacral authority or sometimes solar plexus, emotional authority. And so another way to get through that is to just ask questions that have someone else ask you questions that have a yes or no answer. And there often we can get to a very authentic primal response from that place. Like when David and I were talking about this class, it originally had a different format actually. And we've gone through some changes. So now what you're seeing is the results of asking us some questions. Do you, like, David, do you want to do this? And he'd be like, that feels good. Okay. You know, would this be better moved to a different date? Okay, cool. Would it be better moved to next week? The week after that, the week after that. Different people have different ways that they read that energy. So knowing what it is for you or figuring out, you know, when we're talking about what do you want to create, one of the tools that you can find is learn what works for you. I have a pendulum that I use, muscle testing that I use, or just that sense of light or heavy. You know, if I ask a question and it feels light and tingly, and see what I want to create in my life, I want to wake up turned on, lit up, and exuberant every day. I want to feel like potent and a contribution and adventure, a sense of adventure and excitement. So then I ask, if I'm going to do this thing, what will my life be like if I choose that thing? And if it feels, the energy matches that desire for turned on, lit up, adventurous, exuberant, then I'm going to go for it.
And I want to point out, that's really great. And I want to point out that that's something you're creating. And it's in a space of no judgment. There's no, I mean, thoughts that may come up is, well, how am I going to create that? Or is that even reasonable? Or if I don't, now if I said that I want that and I don't create that, then that I must be wrong or bad, or that must be the wrong choice. And that none of that, like all of that is in the realm of judgment, and none of that is in the realm of creativity, right? Because unfettered creativity has nothing to do with judgment. And let's see, the other thing I want to say is it's an ongoing, creativity is an ongoing creation. A lot of times we create something and then at some point we stop creating. We start getting wrapped up in those judgments or perceptions, and is this right or wrong? Or so it's an ongoing thing to look at the judgments that will naturally come up, because they come up for everybody. And they, as long as you're creating, you're going to have judgments come up, whether from the other people or yourself or both. And so part of that being in that creative zone is being willing to look at those and set them aside.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about whether it's the right one or how I'm going to do that. I mean, because the basic foundation of all creating, I want to say, is being in that space of it being possible, even though I don't know how. When I'm creating my musical, I don't know how. I don't know how, how do you even, or when you're writing your book, how do you even conceive of how you're going to think of everything? It's more of a zone that you enter that comes with the willingness and a wonder of saying, I have no idea how this is going to happen. I have no idea if it's going to be any good or if it's going to look the way I thought it was going to look, but I'm willing to jump in just because it opens my heart up. It opens my soul up and it excites me. Right. So I'm going to see what's going to happen. Right. And it takes the courage. There's a courage that comes with that. It's exciting. It really brings this feeling of aliveness, doesn't it? It's like, because there's like this fear that comes up, like, shit, what if I can't fulfill on it? Or, and you're just like, I don't care. I'm going to go for it and see what the hell happens. And that's being alive, right? Like
that is. And, the truth is that every person on this call, we are all natural born creators. And the question is, what are we going to create? What are you creating? Are you creating judgment and piles of crap to wade through and problems? Or are you creating stuff that makes your heart sing, that makes you feel good about the world? And I think we're going to get into that more. There's 2 more days of these. David and I are going to be on here Monday and Tuesday at 3:00. We're going to do another half hour each time. I think the topics are obstacles. Dissolving obstacles is tomorrow, and I don't even remember. David, do you remember what we said we're going to talk about?
I don't remember the third one, but I want to respond just real shortly to the last thing you said
Okay.
about creating problems, because it's also not necessarily that we're creating. We may not even be creating the judgments or the problems. We may just be responding to all. I think more often is we're responding to old problems, to old judgments that have been around a long time. So whether we're focused, say it again.
Or maybe the word would be focus. Do we focus on problems? But the truth is, if I'm responsible for creating everything in my life, then all the things in my life right now that I consider a problem are actually things that I set in motion on some level, maybe not a conscious level, but on some level, my soul set them in motion, which is good news. The good news is that if I created those, I am a really powerful creator and I can create something else down the line. I'm not a big fan of this happened and external circumstances. I spent too much of my life considering myself the victim of things outside of myself. And we'll go into this more in depth in other days, but if I'm the source of everything, I'm also the solution to everything. And that for me is the ultimate empowering conversation. So.
Cool, we'll leave it at that. Just
so
lots more time to talk about this stuff.
Yes, we do, because we're going to do 2 more days of these for free. And then starting next Sunday, we're going to do a deeper dive that's going to be live on Zoom facilitated called Creativity Beyond Captivity, right? And that class is going to start on the 24th. So if you want to know more about that or anything that I do, you can go to pleasureevolution.com. David, why don't you tell them where they can see some of the music for the show? Because it's a Facebook group, right?
Oh, yes. So the name of my show is, oh gosh, a whole different shifting of focus. What is the name of my show? The Memory of Gods. And I have a Facebook page that you can find. If you go to my page, you can find a link to that. I'm also posting some of the songs on my page. I'd love to share that with you guys if you're interested.
Yeah. And what's your website again?
It's my name, davidsalih.com.
davidsalih.com. Well, there you go. Well, thank you, everybody that tuned in with us live. And thank you to everybody who's watching it in the archives. And we hope you'll join us for the other 2. I don't know if you can see, David, but this is an amazing talk, inspiring. I will re-listen to it again. Thank you very much. So yay, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate your being here and co-creating this conversation with us. So bye-bye, everybody. Until we see you again, do what gets your panties wet. Hey, what can I tell you? Catchphrase.